Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Xiaohua Pan. I'm from NASA Goddard. I'm delighted to attend this ESIP meeting for the first time in person. Before I start, I want to acknowledge my co-author, Thomas, Chris here, and Benita and Hagday. All they work at Justice at NASA. So today I would like to share my experience as an atmosphere scientist. To leverage AI to make a scientific coding. So by sharing this experience, I wanted to let all the audience know what kind of hurdle a scientist may face during the scientific research, and using this AI-powered collocation coding, I want to demonstrate how we as a scientist tackle this kind of hurdle using AI tools. So even though you are not like a scientist as me, you may learn what the scientists may face the hurdle, so you can help this kind of users better. Before I dive into the detail, I want to give you an outline how we start this presentation. Here is the overview. So first, I will start with a brief introduction about the project and me and the AI tools I will use and what the challenge we may face. And next, I will demonstrate the collocation code and outcome and how I streamline in Google Colab. And third, I will share some key insight gained from this leverage AI tool and what work and what doesn't work, and how we can use the insight applying to other broader scientific coding. And in the end, I will summarize the key takeaway point. Now it's time for some background. So my goal is to build a Python notebook that spatial temporally collocated ARNet in situ measurement with a level 2 satellite data, which called ChopOmi, and then produce site level time series and cross-site scatter plot. Some little bit background about me. Yeah, I'm an atmospheric scientist. I also work at NASA DAC to help user. So with this demonstration, I also want to share my experience, how we can help broader users. So as a scientist, we usually have strengths, such as we are good at identify scientific question and identify user need, and have a deeper domain knowledge about data. I'm confident in scientific background and context and data interpretation and basic Python scripting. But I face some challenging in coding, at least of you as here. So how to implement robust collocation logic with Python code, and structuring Python code modularity and reproducibility, because this session is about how to make code reproducible, and how to debug in the code. Usually, it takes more time in create a code. This task, I would say, honest, is challenging to me, but I'm lucky. And recently, AI is very powerful. And here I will introduce one of AI tools, which called ChatGFC. It's a chatbot developed at NASA Goddard for NASA personnel using different AI tools, for example, OpenAI. It's designed for transform scientific and engineering workflow by leveraging secure and enterprise-level AI solutions. So ChatGPT, if you don't know, it helped me accomplish my task by collaborating developing at about 1,700 line Python code. with myself, I could not do that. It helped me transform a complex, multiple-step scientific process into a streamlined and reusable workflow. I will share with you shortly. I feel this partnership allowed me to focus on scientific insight, and AI helped me to manage a technical challenge. So if you have to use a number to measure how AI helped me, I would like to use a number like a factor of 3. It speed up me, and it's fun to work with AI. I will use from now on, I will dive into the heart of this presentation to demonstrate the code and the result. I will use this case study. Los Angeles wildfire occurred last year, January 2025. On your left is a wildfire occurrence map in Palisades and Eaton fire. And on your right is a satellite image showing the wildfire smoke plume inject smoke into Pacific Ocean. So you can see from your eyes, you already see very intense air pollutant. So next, I will introduce the data set I'm gonna co-locate it. The first is AirNet in situ measurement on your left. So on your left shows the AOD. AOD is a quantity called the aerosol optical depth, measuring pollutant. And from here, you can see from January 1st until January 31st. And the AOD peak around the January 9th. And on your right is a satellite image, which is a level 2 satellite sweat, and which from ChopOmi. And what you can see is a snapshot of peak day January 8th, and the red color, which means high aerosol concentration. And on your, bottom right is a day on January 11th when the fire about to extinguished. So the goal is I did to spatially and temporally co-locate these two data sets together. And I think you can apply this to your general research. Many times we need to co-locate at least 2 data sets. For example, here is in situ measurement, which have a high frequency measurement, but only at the point location, cannot cover broader spatial region. And the satellite has its advantage, cover broader spatial area. But the problem with satellite data, as you can see, is many places have missing data. It may be due to the cloud coverage, or due to a brighter surface. And usually lower orbit satellites only have once or twice measurement per day. So it cannot cover very frequent measurement. For in situ measurement, like AirNet as shown here, it can measure at a point every 15 minutes. So what you can see is a very beautiful time series. So one application for this kind of co-location is to, for example, we need to validate satellite data with in situ measurement. So with that in mind, so here is a procedure how I do the spatial and co-location. So I will not read through. Instead, I will use this image to explain how to co-locate AirNet and level 2 satellite data spatially and temporally. So for this program, I didn't simply co-located just one spatial point and one time, because that is not a representative uniformly spatial and temporal coverage, not robust. Instead, I have designed a collocation criteria based on the study by Pacheco 2012. So what we do is we here is an in-situ measurement. We define a 25 kilometer radius circle at each in-situ measurement. And first we find the satellite pixel fall in this 25 radians and do the average and find the satellite passing time. And then we do temporal collocation. What I do here is I find the 1 hour interval, like 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after a satellite passing. So then I average this 1 hour interval. Before I show you the code, I want to say what we get from this code. Here is the result. And I defined a bounding box and time periods of interest. For this case, it's Los Angeles and January 8th to 12th, and like here. And then I read a subset input data on the fly, because you don't want to read a global data. You only want to narrow down the data, so you don't need to download too many data. So with this specification, I found three AirNet stations following this region and the time frame. And then I plot this scatter plot, and x-axis is in-situ measurement, and the y-axis is satellite. So I also put out color code each stations and the statistical numbers. For this time period and this region, we find totally we have 11 part, and the correlation is 0.47. It's pretty good. It's okay. And then I also print out this Excel sheet with more detailed information. So in case you want to examine the result and you want to make your own plot, you can use this CSV file to generate. And next, I will demonstrate this Python code in Google Colab. Here. Yeah.
And Shafa, if you would like to paste the link to that in the chat.
Sure. Yeah, you can see the code, right? Yeah, this code, now you can see what this code look like 1,700 lines with help from AI tools. It's much better than I do my solo. Here you can see the very good header to explain the step and input data and output data. And so for other people want to use this code, they can follow the instructions. And let's start the code part. First, we need to initialize the setup. So we need to install some basic Python package. For example, Earth Access is a Python package to download the NASA data and others. I already run it, so I will not use too much time to run it during this demo. And next, import library. So this Python package we already developed, so just import to here. And then in this part, we do initialization, parameterization. Can you read it? Yeah. For this code, it's very flexible. You can define the radians. For me, I choose 25. You can choose other distance. And you can choose a temporal collocation window. For me, I choose half hour. You may choose 1 hour or like a quarter hour. It's okay. And you also can define the match wavelength. For me, I choose 380, which is both have and most close to each other, and define the input data. Okay, I will skip here. And then you can define the user case. In this code, you can define the region you study And also you can define the time range you are interested in. And then this is the main part of analysis. You just click this, and then you can see very detailed output. I will tell you why I put lots of detail here in next slide. Okay, I will scroll down. This all the output, and in the end of this code, you will see beautiful plot. This one I already show you. This how this located site and the scatter plot for all sites, and we also put out the individual site, time series, and scatter plot for all the stations. Now I back to the presentation. Okay. Yes. So for this session, we focus on interoperability. So for this code, regarding standard and format, for the satellite level 2 data, we have a NetCDF CF convention, and for decoupled in and out, we separate readers, separate how to read the input data, AirNet, and chop OMI level 2, and we also separate how to co-locate the space and time, and the visualization plot. So if people want to use this code, you can use individual modules. And for parameterize the criteria, even you can customize your radiance, time windows, wavelengths, as I just showed you. And and for also I mentioned the provenance. I use site maps as a reference to show how the workflow generalize its co-location. Now move to the lessons learned. I think that's can be generalized to everyone if you are not interested in co-location. So what we learned, what this AI tool good at? For the technical assistance and the code support, this AI tool has been very effective in supporting scientific programming, especially in Python. In this workflow, I need to provide some initial input. For example, how to read this input data. And then I ask AI through prompt to complete the remaining steps, including implementing temporal and spatial collocation. And then this AI tool will perform the following tasks. For example, generate the collocation code and assist with debugging and produce customized plotting script and help me to write clear and reproducible code header to enhance the documentation and collaboration. And in the end, we together handle this large database and produce this very useful Python notebook. And people may wonder what kind of prompt I need to give this AI. So I give some example. And for example, I generate and modify plot code. I would ask AI, add a function to plot time series and overlay all the AirNet set. And in this function, can you help me to add this and modify this? So on and so forth. I will not read one by one. And for this block of code, I would ask you, can you change this line to make change the unit? It helped me. And for debugging, and it can simply just copy the error message to the chat, and it helped me to understand and even give me some solution. And also I also ask AI to give me some print command to help me know the exactly output it should be. And for the understanding the input data, I can ask AI to list the satellite time for this level 2 data, and also ask AI to help me optimize the code. And document the code. Yeah, for second point, what the AI good at is adaptive and interactive support. So I think one of this AI to stand out feature is the ability to adapt to evolve user need, offer interactive guide, like a real person, and also it can track progress and context over time, because it has a historic record, and it has memory of your previous prompt. And the third point is empower scientific users. I think it's very valuable, especially for people like scientists that possess strong domain knowledge but have limited coding experience and need to rapidly generate a prototype or iterate on data analysis workflow and reduce the time spent on debugging and visualization. Usually it costs a lot of time to do that. And now scientists can be released to focus on scientific discovery. Here is some caveat for AI tools. So my take is AI is a versatile assistant with a positive attitude. I can do everything. Never say no. But human still need oversight. We need to have a insight to and ability to identify the problem to eventually generate an accurate result. And here is some thing I summarize what AI is not good at. So first limitation is implement the function without understanding data structure. So AI can do anything, but it cannot really understand data structure, especially for satellite data. It's very complicated. I think scientists, the background still is very valuable. So what my solution recommendation is print step-by-step output. Yeah, I just mentioned during the demonstration why I print lots of output. So that's why, especially in uncertain area. For example, what my experience one is to convert is a two-dimensional time series into one. It can do that, but eventually it make a wrong order. It's not what I expect. I spend lots of time to identify that issue. So I would share that another independent method may help to verify the result. And the second is a change a parameter or code element, not request to be changed. Sometimes you put all the code to AI. Oh, can you help me crack this issue? But secretly, it's a change other part you even don't want to change. So you need to be keep vigilant. And this I think is specific for ChatGPT. And last thing I want to share is sometimes it generates unnecessary long code and a complex solution. So you need to give a prompt such as, is there a simple way to do this in a few lines? Yeah, so that's thing we need to keep in mind. Now is the last slide. To summarize the take-home message, I hope these lessons can useful for your applications. This QR code is you can scan and it's direct you to this Python notebook. So for overall assessment, as a scientist, my experience with AI tool has been very positive. We should be not afraid of AI. We should know how to leverage AI's power. So it accelerated my progress by 3 times. So I really recommend our fellow research user to use AI tools. And the lesson learned, as summarized here, we remain solely responsible for the accuracy of the result, not solely rely on AI. I strongly recommend using AI as a coding assistant while remain critical oversight. For example, review output at a critical coding step to verify the result and validate the final result through independent method whenever it's possible, and never rely blindly on AI generated code. And the last thing I think is can apply to broader key application for scientists. So for these AI tools, we can use to data analysis, developing scientific script for research workflow, and AI also can use for code translation, convert legacy code. Many I know like a model using like a Fortran code. So we can use AI tool to translate to modern language such as Python. And we also can use AI tool to help user support. And for example, answer user ticket and diagnose users issue. And because ChatGPT especially is have some security check. So that's really safe to use, not to release sensitive information. Yeah, that's all I want to share today.
We've got 15 minutes for questions. So if anybody has questions, I will come over to you with this mic. I was thinking about you during this presentation.
I just wanted to clarify. This is a chat bot, not a coding agent, right? It doesn't have the feedback loop. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's the feedback.
It does have the feedback loop.
Does.
So it's a coding agent, not a chat bot, right? Right? Is that right?
How to say that? I'm not AI.
But I mean, when it generates code,
yes,
and then it can run the code,
yes,
and then look at the output, and then based on that, change the code again, or do you chat and then human response, and then it gives you another.
Yeah, it can give you like a response, and then based on the stress and take. I think the best solution and implement to my code. I usually don't put entire code into just partial of code into this AI chatbot.
I think chatbot, right? Okay. And then the other thing was just a comment that I read somewhere that 92% of AI generated stuff is actually not reviewed by the person who created it. And so I'm hoping that, we as scientists are a little more critical, right? Like you said, we need to review, but we have the skills, right, to review, and we're naturally skeptical, hopefully.
That's really scary. Like 90.
I mean, also I didn't fact check that result, so.
Yes, we spend. For this code, actually, we spend like 1 or 2 months to validate the result, and with several scientists. So that's a validation step is essential, especially you like do the user service. You need to be trustable.
So just wondering do you end up kind of sharing this code, or whenever you're working on these different projects, do you end up sharing a lot of the code on like GitHub or anything like that? Like, can anybody contribute to these projects or anything like that? Or do you tend to just have it up there for people to copy?
Yeah, that's a good question. So on your this left corner, we share this code through NASA GitHub. So in the GitHub, their function, you can give feedback. But at the first step, we just let you use as it is. We can still can take in your feedback. It's welcome. Yeah.
If I may add to that, this is currently in the NASA GESDIS tutorials GitHub repository, and I also posted a link to the Colab notebook in the collaborative notes document. But in that GitHub repository, feel free to add issues. I will pretty much be the one reviewing the pull request. But what we decided to do was put that in that repository. There's a few other utilities that it loads into the notebook. That's where that's currently stored. So
yes.
Thanks. I'm Chris Sherwood. I'm at the USGS. I don't know how this chatbot works exactly, but in some others, you can give it a whole bunch of instructions that are saved in memory and are reused occasionally. Like one of the things I tell mine to do is not to do a lot of error checking on the input or stuff like that. Because it just makes the code long and hard to read. And I have it sign the code and tell me what model it is and things like that. Can you do that with your system?
Yes, you can do that. Usually what I do is when I develop this code, I allow it print out. But when I think, oh, this code passed the validation, I just comment out the print out too much error. Yeah, too long to read. Another question?
We have 10 minutes.
Brandon with the USGS as well. So ChatGSFC is an internal chatbot. Did you have any issues sourcing data between agencies? Like I saw some of the data was from a NOAA in situ station. Does that have access to just published data essentially?
Yeah, it
And publicly
can
available?
access all the public data, but specific this tool is access to all the NASA resources document. But for the public data, I think it has capability to access all the public data and intercompare data through USGS, NASA. It can.
And you didn't have any issues kind of overcoming a barrier between different agencies' source data, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not for this project. I have do some study to using NOAA data. But it's through AMS like free register. I can use like a cloud data very easily. But usually the workflow is different from NASA. We need to overcome different mechanism in different agencies. NASA has its own work package, workflow to read NASA data. And I think US has your own. So, yeah.
Yeah, we have an issue with, we were looking at harmful algal blooms in Colorado, and we're trying to pull satellite imagery from NASA and compare it to our in situ data points from our local sampling on reservoirs in Colorado. And I think we've had some issues kind of reaching out and getting the source data formatted correctly when we're pulling everything back for comparisons. But I just wanted to be interested.
We here I didn't show. We have like NASA have Earth Data Forum. It's a user forum. Whenever you have any question regarding NASA data, you can post your question over there. A monitor will direct you to the right person. For example, I know USGS Landsat is is popular data. So any data, if you give some title and state out your problem issue, people will help you find the right person.
Perfect.
Don't hesitate to do that. We are part of Earth Data Forum, including Brandon. So yeah.
Perfect. Thanks.
We've got about 5 minutes left.
Thanks for your talk. I have a question about, like I've had the experience when I'm using a chatbot to help me with code where I know I want to get from point A to point B, and they'll give me code that I kind of get, but I don't fully understand it. And no, I probably would have not come up with that myself. I'm just wondering if that happened to you, and kind of how much do you kind of push it to make sure that you know, like precisely, like, every single function and how it's working versus, like kind of the balance between never blindly relying on generated code and also getting the task done. If you've experienced that, I'm just curious.
Okay, can you rephrase your question?
Oh, sure. So if you ever had the experience in this where you the suggestion for the code was maybe something that you would not have thought of yourself, and just curious if you kind of keep pushing it to the point where you do understand it, or do you just accept it as is and say like, this is good enough? Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this AI power tool some part of, like, for example, Python code is really beyond my capability. For example, Python has existing functionality, so I rely on that for the existing functionality. But for what like when I combine to my user case, I really need to validate the results at my best. Yeah. Depending on which part I can rely, which part I cannot. Yes. Good question.
Okay. I've actually got a really quick question for you, Xiaohua. Do you want to just briefly elaborate on what prompted this notebook to be created?
Yeah, this notebook, like first off, like we use ChatGPT, it only can generate a Python code, and it has limitation. And then, Chris helped me to convert this Python code into notebook because notebook is more user friendly. As I demonstrated, you can click cell by cell and see the step-by-step result. So Chris helped me generate like a modularized and generate into a notebook, and then use a Google Colab and upload to the Google Colab, which has established some basic environment. Usually, I think if you use Python, you often have some issue about this Python package, right? The version, and the Google Colab has this, I think is a benefit. It already has some existing basic Python package. And for the additional Python package, you can like use a pip install. Even you can specify the version you know is work. And then this code is easy to share. And everybody, after this session, you can try your own. And most time it's work. It's better than you download a Python notebook from some GitHub and run your own laptop. Many times it has some compatibility issue. Do you want to add something?
No. Yeah, I guess the only thing I can add is a lot of this came from our work with a lot of moving different services that have already existed to the cloud. Our Tropomi AeroNet tool basically came out of the map service deprecation. And so we made sure, and you did a lot of testing to make sure that it was ready to go once we did turn maps off. We had one particular user working group member who relied very heavily on that tool. And that user in particular didn't have much Python experience. And so I think you've done a really great job of combining all these things to make a notebook that very appropriately is a continuation of that service, just in a Jupyter notebook form.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay. All right. Thanks, Xiaohua.
You're welcome. Thank you for the permission.
Okay, and continuing our theme of open source tools for geospatial analysis, I would like to introduce to you all Ethan Shavers from the USGS. I'll hand it over to you.
Yep, thanks, Chris and Xiaohua. That was a good companion presentation to this one. So my name's Ethan Shavers. I'm the section chief and researcher with the Center of Excellence for Geospatial Information Science. We're a basic research group within the National Geospatial Technical Operations Center. And that is NGTOC. That's the operational arm of the national map for the USGS. So we collect the data, contract, collect, QC, and distribute data. So like the 3D elevation program, the 3D hydrography program, both of which I'll be touching on. Some of these tools are related to those things. The national maps, so topo maps, things like that. So any questions you guys have about that, I may not be able to answer, but I can like point you to people who may have probably. So we are, like I said, a basic research group asking new questions about geospatial data. Historically, cartographers and geographers. Now, I have a geosciences, geology background, a lot more earth science and remote sensing, obviously. And also, you know, like a lot of you, I'm sure, are transitioning into this open science open source software world that, you know, the government is advocating for. So we're going from publishing papers to try to start publishing tools. The trick is, as I was mentioning to Chris, historically we were developing tools with the idea that they would be operationalized eventually by the national map. So we operated internally from big systems. You know, we work on Tallgrass, the USGS AI supercomputer, and other ones. We have our own internal clusters. And then we have our own internal data sets too, so we can just point it to the data, you know. So now we're publishing these tools in GitHub with the help of folks from CDI and the USGS in general. But how do we make these more useful? Are these useful? So I'm looking for input. These are some of the first tools that our group has released in this new era. So this is a QR where you can link to this CGIS GitHub page. And this is the first one I'm going to go over. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I did go by that super quick. And I could put that in the chat too. Okay, thanks. So yeah, I'm going to go over 3 tools. There's actually 4 on there. I can talk about the other one if there's interest. So this 3-depth point cloud classification tool was, and actually the seed funding for that came from CDI, USGS CDI. So that's very cool. The SEG Hydro tool has come out of years of development on surface water channel extraction to update or validate the NHD, National Hydrography Dataset. And then scale-specific sinuosity is a tool that was published to accompany a paper on that topic. That's a sinuosity metric that we derived or came up with, originated. So first, I'll start with this 3-depth point cloud classification tool. As I mentioned, this was initially funded by CDI. And I failed to mention, so I'm the lead researcher on the scale-specific sinuosity tool, but I'm presenting for other folks from CGIS. We're the leads for these other two tools. So Ernie Lee Yu is a CGIS researcher. He's the lead on this tool. But CGIS is much bigger. We have student contractors that work with us. They're computer scientists. They're key, do a lot of the work, coding work on these tools, and also academic collaborators. And on this one, Rongjin Chin's lab at Ohio State University was a big part of this too. So you're probably aware, we've recently completed contracting of LiDAR point cloud data for all of CONUS. Now, the data is not all available yet. There's still some collection going on, but big step for us. So we have all this LiDAR data available, really unprecedented resource, collected with the objective of deriving 1-meter elevation data. So the point cloud is a bonus. You know, I'm glad we kept it. We got radar data for Alaska, and we did not keep the radar data. We just got the derivatives, which I'll mention later. But in this case, we do have that LiDAR data, so it's a huge resource. But the specification for it was just focused on that getting that DEM. So there's a lot of characteristics potentially that could be revealed, or benefits that could come from that LiDAR data if the classification was better. As an example, this is the LiDAR base spec, USGS base specs that shows the minimum point cloud classification that needs to be in there. So obviously just really focused on getting a bare earth. Whereas this is what could be collected. So this is the standards from the specifications from ASPRS. So, and some of the 3-depth data has this. It depends on whether the partners were interested in. You know, I guess contractors charge more to build out more of this classification. But often it does not, especially in our older data sets. This 3-depth's been going on for like 10 years now. So this is an example of some of that data that does not have that that extensive classification from the last slide. This is an example. And you can see this is the full point cloud. So, there's overlap, like a lot of those bare earth points are probably underneath vegetation, but here they're just unclassified. So a very basic classification scheme. This is another example where you just get basically bare earth and bridge deck and then unclassified. So Ernie's work is on feature extraction, broadly AI for feature extraction. So you could see having better classification could really help. He's working on things like power line extraction, building footprint, things like that, vegetation characterization. So they found this data set from this data fusion contest, and the publication for the data set is below the figure there. But it's a nice data set. It's got like the remote sensing data with it, a DEM, I believe. But then it's got polygons associated with all those classifications and the classified points too, for Jacksonville, Florida, and Omaha. So a really nice data set. So their idea was, can we take that, train an AI model to reclassify any 3D LiDAR point cloud data? Ambitious, but they, really great team, and OSU, Ohio State University, was really did a great job. And the AI models are just, what's out there is really impressive as well. Some validation scores, an example of, this is the validation data. So they built a validation data set so that they weren't just testing on the training data. So randomly selected some 3D data from different areas in the United States. And this is some of their results. So Alameda, California, and you can see A is just the natural color image. B is the reclassification. And their tool has two different nets, two different AI models that can be implemented to do the reclassification. So there's the Randall net and then the point transformer. More results from Kai Bob, Arizona. And this is their evaluation scores and a link to a conference paper at the bottom that talks more about a citation rather for that. I don't know, maybe if you could drop that manuscript citation in the chat, that would be great. Thank you. And this is what the tool interface basically looks like. I signed up to do a live demo, so I'm going to try it. So it is a Docker container. Although, as I mentioned, we're working on HPC systems. So it works in a Linux environment, and you currently do have to have a GPU available for it. Obviously, you're reclassifying LiDAR data with an AI model, so it's a little time consuming, especially some of those LiDAR files are super big. I was going to show that Git repo. So this is the NGTalk CGIS GitHub project where we're starting to post tools. So this is Ernie's tool here, and you can clone this, and it's super simple. If you have your GPU implemented and Docker installed, it's just a matter of downloading it and then running it, and it opens the tool in a browser. Downloading it, unpacking it, and running it, I should say. So that's all I did here. This is on our Linux internal cluster, the single GPU on here. So I've already, obviously, to avoid catastrophe, unpacked it here. So all I need to do is that Docker run. And this is copied directly from, you can see it in the README and on that homepage in the repository. So you don't need to change anything there. And then just run that. And so that opens up a URL. You can open in a browser. You can copy and paste that URL to, that's right here, host name. And I'm not going to do any classification here. Reclassification does take some time, and then obviously this is even going way slower than normal.
When you say reclassified, so they're taking what's available to get and they're reclassifying the ground also?
All the points
Okay.
in the LiDAR file. It takes in an LPC file. It can be LAS or LAS, and it reclassifies all. Now, it may not change the classification. If the model thinks, no, that's correctly classified, it will leave it the same. But yeah, all the points in that LPC file. So I did it on one dense, recent collection, dense LPC file from an urban area, so complex landscape really. And I think the total thing, so loading, reclassifying, exporting, I want to say it took me 10 minutes. And that's just with a single GPU on our internal cluster. If you had that on a bigger machine, you could drag and drop a bunch of files. That's super slick. This is, of course, this is acting this way. So maybe I'll just leave that alone. And I have a recording, but that's not super interesting either. So. But this is literally what the interface looks like. So there would be nothing on the left or the right where you see those figures. And on the bottom left, you select your model, the point transformer or RandleNet. I think from the scores, they like the point transformer performed better. But you just drag and drop, or you can search your files in there, and you can see it's got the LAV5, LAD.LAS. It'll load your files there. It takes a little time. And then just hit classify, and it starts to reclassify that LiDAR data. It's really easy. And you can move your files around. So it actually opens it up in a 3D view, the point cloud file. So you can open it up, move it around, make sure it's what you wanted. And then hit classify, and then download your results. So yeah, really slick tool. Hopefully, folks can get this and make some use of it. Certainly, if there's any questions or other capabilities people would like to see, let us know. You can, I'm sure, comment to that repository as well. I think they are trying to build this out with more training data sets. As I said, this was a CDI project, and so far it's only been trained by the one 2019 data set from that competition. So they're the classification even better. So I just went over this. It's that simple: download the Docker image, Docker pull, and then run the tool. The next tool I'm going to go over is Seg Hydro. This is one that it's research code. It's a big workflow. It's using AI, trained on contractor derived and HD data. So some background. Let me jump into that. So Larry Stanislavski, the lead author, the paper on the bottom here. He's the lead USGS CGIS staff on this, but this has been a huge effort with a bunch of academics, a bunch of students, some of them listed on these publications, and also Xiaowen Wang's lab at University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. So they have been integral. I think we went through 3 PhD students in the development of this over the years. But so the motivation and what, why are we doing this? On the left is NHD data, 1 to 24K from 1989 in Alaska. No, this is not in Alaska, but this is from a publication. Just an example of how that historic NHD data is recognized that there may be places where it doesn't represent the current landscape perfectly. Obviously, I'm being diplomatic with my language there. And places where it doesn't match, our new DEMs that we're collecting these DEMs to build cartographic products. So the topo maps are going to be built with these 1 meter DEMs for North America. So we want blue lines, we want NHD data, now 3D hydrography program data to match the elevation data. So the 3D hydrography program is the first remapping of the streams of the United States since the original NHD collections of the 20th century, 19th to 20th century. And this is being done right now through contractors. So we have a NHD spec or a 3D HP spec, and contractors deliver us this blue line data. So we're thinking about, and this is how dramatic the change can be, and maybe probably more so in some places. On the right, you see some of this updated, really surface water flow accumulation derived data. And we don't stipulate it that it's flow accumulation derived, but anecdotally, and logically, that's a component of their process. So we in CGIS, we're thinking about how do we validate that? How do we do things like change detection? How do we do things like QC? Because this is just ramping up this collection of this new data. And right now, those things like validation and QC take a lot of effort, a lot of manual labor in our office. So thinking like, can we build a tool that would approximate this so we could do things like density comparison, things like that. So I mentioned radar data in Alaska. So instead of LIDAR, like was collected for CONUS, radar data was collected in Alaska because of terrain challenges. All of that data was airborne. So in the past, LIDAR was hard to do big areas from remote airports. This is changing with Geiger mode, different LIDAR sensors. But as it stands, we have this interferometric synthetic aperture airborne radar data for Alaska. So that's our input data source. And what that looks like, if we don't have the raw data, but we get orthorectified radar intensity images. So that's like a reflectance intensity. That's in a finer spatial resolution. You see here, it's like from 0.6 to 2.5 meter spatial resolution. And then we get a DEM and a DSM, and those are at 5 meter spatial resolution. I mentioned we've been working on this research for years, like 7 years now, I think. So there's a lot of derivatives of the elevation data that we found to be beneficial in modeling where surface water is. This is an example of some of those. So like curvature up on the top, we got the ORI. So this is just a catch, a Hub 12, hydrologic unit code 12. Curvature, TWI with topographic wetness index, shallow water model. So on the second row, far left. So that's like a 2D shallow water model depth output. And of course, that's what we found to be the most valuable input layer. But these other ones all, we've done lots of layer testing, significance testing, and then all these have benefit the model and others as well. And I can get to that. These are all, the whole tool is done using open source tools with Python. GRASS is probably one of the most valuable of those tools. Some of the things we hard code, but a lot of these tools we use as well. Study area is one of the early contractor collected data sets was from this kind of northwestern area, but it's got a lot of terrain relief. You can see in the elevation model on the right, there's like lowland, a braided stream, big braided stream valley in the bottom, which, you know, is as challenging as it gets. Alaska hydrology in general probably is as challenging as it gets in the United States. So, yeah, really interesting test site. This is what that contractor data looks like. We still find the UNet is best performing, so that's an example of what that framework looks like. And from Ronenberg was that original UNet publication on the bottom. And so Seg Hydro, we release as like have released as an example code set so people could see the models we're using, the type of data we're using. So this can be accompanied with a publication. This is a provisional release. It's not the full workflow. It doesn't have all the like user testing and everything, but it does. I mean, we've run it on several systems now, and all the code is there, so you can see what we're doing now. A few key files to run this. We have a training data set. Of course, like you saw, it's complex input data sets. We've got a small, like 3 catchment example data set, 3 Huck 12 data set where like it's the training data, all those elevation derivatives and everything. So hopefully we'll be able to do like a data release so people can test this. But in theory, people could build their own data sets using NHD data and then some of those open source tools. Or it's probably not, we can look at it, but it's probably not too tricky to input your own derivative data. So I can go over some of this, but there's an environments file. That's a big part of it. Build up a unique environment. This is, again, a Linux system. It doesn't require a GPU, but it has that compatibility. Uses conda. And then there's several different commands. So there's a setup that builds your model, sample where it's selecting your different, it's sampling your input data. So all those raster data sets, it's sampling those at the specified window size. Generates training samples. So it just goes through that standard AI training, sampling, test, predict. This is the full workflow here. If there's questions about that, let me know. But it's a pretty classic AI workflow. There's, you know, your window size, your augmentation steps, all of that is built into there. So maybe we can take a look at that. I'm not going to try running that one, but this is the so inside that Seg Hydro main, this is really, I just cloned it from their repository. And the only thing I had to do was go in there and because we publish these through the USGS, we can't put file path names, we have to, you know, that's the only thing. So you have to specify your local relative file paths. And there's 3 areas in this configuration template file where that has to be done. And that's the only thing in here that needs to be changed. And those all are represented as paths, so placeholder here. So once we do publish that sample data set, you could download that, put it in, and then just point these file paths to that sample data set, and you'd be able to run this and see output surface water predictions for 3 catchments in Alaska. So yeah, pretty straightforward there. Don't think I was going to mention anything else on that. The last one I was going to go over is the scale specific sinuosity. This is a URL or QR code for that one, but it's under that same one from before, that NGTOC CGIS project. I'll talk a little bit about the algorithm itself. So sinuosity is important for a lot of things, especially for characterizing streams. And historically, there hasn't been an agreed upon way to do that automatically. And now with all the remote sensing data we have, these country, national, international, global stream data sets, how can we try to characterize the complexity of streamlines or lines in general in a way that can be represented digitally for analysis? So we came up with the scale-specific sinuosity metric. Here's the manuscript that we originally published the algorithm in. So this repository is actually the first implementation that's been made available. So what is S3? It's a derivative of the classic Richardson plot that's used for fractal evaluation or fractal dimension. So you basically adjust your stride length, and as you adjust your stride length or your measurement unit, you take the measurement of the full stream. So as your unit gets larger on the x-axis here in the middle, the length of the stream gets shorter as bends get cut off. So historically, that was used just to get a single slope value from, where they would just, sometimes they would just take the steepest slope. Sometimes they would researchers would just fit a line to that curve in the middle. But there's a ton of information in that curve, especially when you start looking at streams. So, for example, the place where it drops off the most, that's going to be the dominant bend size that's contributing to the overall fractal dimension, the overall sinuosity of that feature. So what we've done is take, it's very simple, it's just -1 times the slope of the Richardson plot, which gives us positive values on the S3 curve. I could talk a lot more about what that represents and how it relates mathematically to different things, but that's in the paper. So there's some parameters that are required for generating the S3. Things like your stride length resolution. So how the resolution of your x-axis, basically, from that plot we were just looking at. There's a lot. You get noise where things go in and out of phase with your curve, potentially. Things where your step sizes go in and out of phase with your curve can create some noise in there. So there's also a smoothing window size, or you can decide not to use that. So different hyperparameters that are all available to be tuned in this workflow. Your minimum and maximum stride lengths that you want to look at. So like I'm going to show the workflow is set up here to work on the SWORD global stream data set. And so the minimum width of a stream that's measured in that data set is like 30 meters, because it's Landsat's a component of that derivation process. So there's no point in us looking at stride lengths or potential bends that are less than, like 150 meters if the minimum width of a stream is 30 meters. So things like that to think about. Max stride, what's the largest bend that could potentially contribute to whatever you're trying to look at. So those are other hyperparameters. The derivatives, there's a bunch of them. So this is a new tool. We just published the S3 algorithm a few years ago. We don't know how it's going to be used by researchers. We're looking at it for several different things. Discharge modeling. We've got some publications coming out about that. And also multi-scale representation of data is a big thing for us in the mapping office. So we have to change the data changes as the map scale changes. So how do we record an original sinuosity or control for sinuosity in the simplification process of streamlines? Something else we're looking at. So some of the derivatives of the S3 curve that we've been looking at are earth movers distance between like some fixed curve size, like the red curve on the bottom that could represent a very sinuous stream. Peak stride, area under the curve, standard deviation. And we talk about some of these in some publications that are out there already. I mentioned that SWOT or SWORD data, so that's the surface water and ocean topography. So SWOT, Mission River Database. Good data set for us because it has some meander length attributes built into it. So I mentioned we've got publications, but that's what this tool was released for, was to accompany some papers coming out looking at these comparisons. And so we have this S3 tool. Not going to try to run this. Do I still have that? Like, it's still never loaded. Yeah. There's a bunch of functionality in there, but you can just download this. That Sword River data that's available. They're on version 17 now, I think, maybe 18. You can download that for the globe, and it's in like continent specific. I think there's 7 geopackage files. You can download those and run this tool and get sinuosity metrics and S3 curves output. It should be totally functional. It works on Linux and Macs, and if you can do like a Windows shell, potentially to run it on a Windows machine. The documentation is more thorough in this one. This was an official public release. So I would love it if people would try this out and like point out things we could update, ways we could add functionality. So there's the tools to do that broader run on the SWORD data, but also there is like some command line functionality just to generate an S3 curve for a single flow line or single like geopackage line, digital line. And I was going to poke around in here and kind of show you the setup and the functionality, but I think, maybe for the sake of time, just open it to questions. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Valerie Dixon from NASA ESDIS. So seeing these presentations back to back, I want to plant seeds of ideas here. The 3D elevation profile model was really great, but it really had a challenge modeling water features. I noticed, other objects, it did a really great classification, but then you've got this lovely global stream data for all of North America. And I'm wondering if there's thoughts and creative juices flowing about maybe using some of the chat AI capabilities to see if we can overlay the 3D elevation profile CONUS with the global stream data North America to help train that model to identify water better, because that seems like this is a great opportunity and time to.
Yeah, there's a lot of data sets that could be beneficial for modeling surface water, right? That global stream data is nice, but it's big streams. And when we're modeling, like those aren't hard for the model for that seg hydra model. 30-meter streams are not a problem. It's the headwater streams. It's complex braided channels that SWORD data doesn't necessarily benefit. But we are looking at other data sets. Remote sensing data is the big thing for us. So how do we integrate high temporal resolution, low spectral resolution, optical data, things like that.
Or metadata that can make that easier.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mentioned, this is what I think the two presentations are complementary because now there's tools that could maybe adapt these, put these, we can ask AI to just put this in Jupyter Notebook and change the input data format, right? So hopefully that will make these more accessible to different research teams. So yeah, no, good point.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Blanton from NOAA, and we at GFDL use some of these river data sets to create the initial condition or the initial grids for our various Earth system models. And this process, I'm in modeling systems, so I'm not a part of the scientists who create the grids, but this is a reasonably challenging process to create initial condition data model grids from the river routing data sets and how important they are for mapping the Earth system's processes. So this is, it was great to see.
Good. Yeah, that's definitely a driver for us to make the networks better.
I'm still Chris Sherwood from the USGS. I have a question about how do you on the 3D hydro thing? How do you train it? The contractors are drawing lines. Are those are they doing those manually from the
So for that seg hydro surface water extraction AI workflow, the input is contractor derived blue lines, right? So we have contractor specifications. I'm not an expert on that, but we don't tell them how that they need to derive the lines. We're keeping an eye out for density, how well it aligns to an elevation model, vertically and horizontally, like is it going over hills or something, is it jumping out of a channel? So there's vertical, horizontal accuracy related to the DEM. We watch for density. We have an idea about density patterns from historic data, but we don't stipulate how they generate that data.
And how do you use it to train the model? What?
Yeah, good question. So we do a lot of things. As I mentioned, it's a complex workflow. So we do some things like, because we're training it to do a pixel-wise classification on raster data, we have some steps where, depending on its distance from the headwater, we adjust widths because we expect streams to get bigger. We also do some kind of filter, like shallow water model filtering. Like if we don't expect to see lines here, we're going to cut it out from a shallow water model perspective. Because if you're familiar with shallow water modeling, it's like a digital inundation process, and it does a physics model where you get depths and flow speeds in two directions, and you can output what an expected water depth on the surface, like in centimeters, right? So how deep would the water be if we inundated it for, this amount of rain for this many hours? So you get fuzzy data. That way you don't get like, this is where your exact streams are going to be, because you get sheet flow and different weird things happening. But so we use that, some filtering steps in that. And I could, if you really want to know all the details, there's a few, at least probably 3 publications out there that we've done over the years that kind of talk more about that, building that initial training data set.
Thanks.
We got time for 2 more quick questions.
Oh, I have a humorous aside that if you ever put your S3 into the cloud, the naming is going to get real confusing.
I know, right? Yeah. There's several of those. Yeah.
So with your 3-depth classification, is that tool trained basically on the same payload and all the 3-depth flights? Do you have more data sets or repository for like different payloads, potentially even terrestrial LiDAR?
So the point cloud classification tool is trained on a multimodal data set from that. Well, I think it was like an image classification challenge in 2019.
So it was just that one challenge.
That's the only thing it was trained on so far.
Sure. Is there a repository for where we could drop
for the training data,
or where we could drop? I guess we have a lot of like LAS files
Uh-huh.
that, like, I think for most of these projects, the bulk of the time and effort goes into classifying these point clouds.
Mhm.
And so we have a lot of raw LAS files that have yet to be classified or are in the process of being classified.
Sure.
But that could be like a potentially good option of comparing both methods and seeing
Yeah.
where we end up on both ends. But,
Absolutely. Yeah,
know where to
this could potentially be helpful then for you. And I mentioned the next thing to be, so it showed good results. It's not perfect. But the next thing is to try to get more training data. And there's been some recent collections that are part of the 3DEP program that have really nice classification built in, especially like South Texas. There was a big project down there where the LiDAR
With
data just looks beautiful.
Guadalupe.
Really well classified. It's along the coast.
Okay.
I don't know, Houston area, I think. But yeah, the next steps are to try to improve that training.
Sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine your final product that you get from that tool still requires a lot of manual review and cleaning up.
Yeah. I mean, it's a first pass at reclassifying.
Sure. But it's a good starting point.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah, just a step along the way towards, like, detailed feature extraction, really.
Sure.
Is the goal. Or 3D representation as well.
All right.
Rich Signal, ex-USGS. Tangential a little bit, but is all this 3DEP data, what the point cloud data that's on the cloud is like, is it COP-C? That's the
It's
cloud optimized?
available in LAS, LAS, and I think most of it's in COP-C now too. There's also Entwine. I mean,
is that a downstream thing, or is that
COP-C and Entwine are downstream of the data delivery to?
And is that done by a third party, or is that USGS?
USGS.
Okay. And this tool could be applied, I mean, with some modification, I guess this tool could be applied
For COP-C data?
Yeah.
Good question. As far as I know, they've only formatted it for LAZ and LAS, but it's a good question.
COP-C now spec.
It may be.
I believe it.
Yeah.
We just rewrote.
As a deliverable from the
We
contractors?
just rewrote our spec for Kentucky, so I'm pretty sure that in the USGS spec that
Could be.
COP-C or COP-C is the
Mhm.
deliverable. The required deliverable.
Yeah, could be. We were doing Entwine. It was all in-house. We would entwine the data ourselves, but that was Rick Brown, our local expert on that data set, and he is gone. Maybe they're asking contractors to do it now.
All right. Thank you very much again.
Yeah, thank you guys.